cost of production and stability of the government are two key factors in attracting investment and growth. We may sugarcoat this with lots of other things, but if we are realistic, and also when you are dealing with real life, you have to make those realistic conclusions and analysis. So two factors must be considered. For 30 years, close on 3 decades, China was able to grow at 10% because of these factors, and also very strong and practical and effective political economic decisions. I would strongly recommend that we read firstly the modernization proposals, the 4 proposals of Zhou Enlai in his last years as the Prime Minister in China at the time of great turmoil, and also the reforms brought in by Deng Xiaoping. The crux of that, of all those proposals, was that China must realistically look at their potential and ruthlessly and vigorously ensure that this potential is realized. I think it was that strong policy decision to move away from Mao Zedong's economic policies, which still some of our socialists believe in, which led to the worst famine known to man. Under the Cultural Revolution, China went through the worst famine of contemporary times. I think if you read Amartya Sen's analysis of the Bengal famine and the Mao Zedong famine, I don't think anybody will subscribe to the economic theories of the left or the JVP, because that type of ideology-led thinking in the end leads to economic disaster and famine. The sooner we realize that, the better. So this 30 years, 3 decades of growth has had implications, as I mentioned, for China, which had double-digit growth for 3 decades, as well as its reverse, its obverse for the economies of the advanced countries, principally the US and the European Union. What did they do? I mean, to put it very simply, they started shutting down their own industries and buying cheap goods from China. I mean, that is the crux of the developed country's economy, because with the labor costs, with the political bargaining, with giving in every time to the worst elements of the workers in those countries, they lost their competitive edge. And as a result, particularly under Greenspan and Reagan, because the dollar is the global currency, they were able to ensure a situation where there was a flood of dollars into the United States, very high debt, but nevertheless, to put it in Reagan's words, the people never had it so good. They never had it so good. There are so many cars in the garage, so many houses, high style of living, but it was all predicated on borrowed funds. So somewhere along the line, the crash had to come. Now I come to the main point. Whatever optimistic reports we may get from these professors, the fact of the matter is that the Western economies are going to fight back. They cannot any longer open their economies to this type of flooding by low-cost products produced by their own multinationals, mind you. If you go to Shanghai, you will find across the Pearl River all the global brand names, all in bright lights. Every single big brand name in the world is manufacturing out of China. But at what cost? Today, the IMF, other monetary authorities, leading economies, countries are all now talking of growth with employment. They never talked about it earlier. For 3 decades, they never talked about growth with employment till they realized that with every successive election, the employment issue is going to make and unmake presidents of the United States. All of a sudden, all the heads of European Union countries got thrown out. Gordon Brown, Sarkozy, all these people, in one shot, over 1 year, all the leading heads of state of the European Union got thrown out. Why? Because of the employment problem. So if you look at it like that, though we may not call it protectionism, in this report you say protectionism has not reared its ugly head and all that stuff. But believe you me, whether they call it protectionism or otherwise, they have to put some controls. Otherwise, they are done for. Because you can't live in the United States where every factory is, in every state, every day there is a factory closing down. That is the reality of United States before elections. When they found that every day at least one factory is being closed down due to cheap commodities coming in. It's very crucial that the last presidential election Obama won because of Ohio State. The swing state, the battleground was Ohio. And fortunately for Obama, Ohio was the only state in which the state had intervened to save the industries there with subventions. Ohio went to Obama and the country went to Obama by the breadth of its skin. In the future, nobody will be able to win elections in the West or in the United States unless they look at the employment figures. You know very well that what gives the nightmares to the American administration is the monthly employment report. Rajit, you know that very well. Every month there is a report which says so many people have been employed or so many fellows have lost jobs, so that if the employment figures go up, the president has a sigh of relief. If not, he is in big trouble. So in that situation, what are we to do? All these optimistic messages that if we talk and we have conversations and we have trade pacts and we have a nice dialogue with them, pat them on their heads that they are going to buy our products, I don't think. However much we wish that, I don't think that is going to happen. Because it's a matter of political survival for them. Absolutely a matter of political survival for them to rebalance. Now they are called to rebalance their economy with employment as a major factor. And how do they propose to do it? Now this is very important for all of us, because the advantages they lost through labor costs, through high wages in Europe, the tradition of negotiation, all that is to be supplanted only with one factor: science and technology. The only way that the West can counter this mass possibility of low cost production is through science and technology. And that is why everybody is talking of science and technology, which is not very much featured in this report. So we are going into an age where on one side there will be cost of production and stability of that region counterposed against development of science and technology, so that individual costing of goods, because I don't think any developed economy can go back in their lifestyle. You can do it in unknown ways by promoting transcendental meditation, Buddhism and various things, so that you can decrease your wants. But that is a long process. I don't think all of a sudden, overnight, American wants are going to be decreased by the Dalai Lama or by transcendental meditation. They will stick to that. They will want it. So how do they produce it? For a growing consumer society. I think that's the real crux of the matter. On one side, there is the consumer society that is hooked on to all these cheap and sometimes surplus goods, which the West cannot compete with their manufacturing base. Then how do you meet this crisis? That is the real problem of trade and investment. We in Sri Lanka must realize that is, one has to find country-specific solutions. Solutions for China, or for Vietnam, or for Singapore cannot be the solutions for Sri Lanka, located as we are, with our own agricultural base, with our own population. So how do we fashion a trade and investment policy which is country-specific for Sri Lanka? That is what we are trying to address in this time's budget. This is the most important thing. What is the realistic strategies for growth in Sri Lanka? Of course, information is necessary, research is necessary, but also practical common sense is necessary to find out how we can get that growth path of 7, 8, 9% growth, which we have in a very practical sense established now for a period of 6 or 7 years, and which we are hoping to go into the future with our plans for 2016. Yeah, our midterm plans up to 2016. Now, obviously, you have to think of short-term, medium-term, and long-term strategies. Very often, we tend to confuse these things. What can we do now? What can we do in the medium term? And what can we do in the long term? They can't be widely disparate. One must run into the other, of course, but we have to see what we can do at the present moment. I'm very glad that in this report there is a lot of reference to agriculture, food security. Now, before we come to that, one of the suggestions is the rebalancing. Now, rebalancing to cater to domestic demand, regional demand, that sort of thing has to be looked at in a country-specific situation. Certainly, China can think of rebalancing, as they are now after their recent Congress. They will look more inwards. Their growth, which as I predicted, is going to be challenged from the developed nations, they are responding very fast. They see that practical challenge and they are trying to look at the domestic demand. That is a feasible thing for China for several reasons. Because they have grown to such a level and they can now address internal disparities. One of the lessons we can learn from Deng Xiaoping and his successors, they are very practical. What did he say? He said we can't develop this country, the whole of China can't be developed over. That's not possible. Let us select 5 or 6 countries, develop those ports. All those countries will be facing the sea. Because something that many Sri Lankans don't understand. You can't import or export unless you have seaports and airports. What can you import and export if you don't have ports and airports? So they all have to go out and come in. Some stupid people are asking, why are you having so many ports? Why are you having so many airports? That is because we want to import and export.